Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Sunday the 19th of March 2017 and we're briefly discussing the question, is the world heading for an economic improvement? One of the areas we should be covering in greater depth within the inner sanctum is a serious discussion and debate on what is actually happening within the world's economies. We hear the pumpers and conspiracy theorists claim that all of the official financial figures are false and that we are standing on the edge of an economic precipice, which they have been saying since 2008, and many have called for a change in economic strategy and have, in the main, supported a Trump presidency and craved an end to globalisation. However, there is a counter-argument which is at least interesting to note and debate, and which to some extent reveals that not everything is quite as clear and obvious as it may first seem. This is how the argument runs. 2008 witnessed the most severe financial crisis since the Depression. However, it could be argued that a broad-based economic upswing is at last underway, certainly in America, Europe, Asia, and the emerging markets. Despite this, the general mood has been negative, which has led to a populist rebellion, nurtured by years of sluggish growth. Globalisation is out of favour, and economic nationalism, as advocated by a Donald Trump presidency, and the ascendancy of anti-establishment politicians is increasing. However, we have to ask the question, will such populist policies improve the economic situation or actually adversely affect it, especially as economic conditions are already improving? We have already seen President Trump claim that the latest US job figures were the result of his policies. Many economists regard this as rubbish, quoting that any policies that he has actually effected have not as yet had time to work through the system. In fact, the American economy has added jobs for 77 months in a row. The only difference being is that before coming into power, Donald Trump claimed that the figures were inaccurate and forged, and yet now he is president. They are a testament to his job-creating success, even though the way they are calculated have remained unchanged. The fear amongst the economic and banking community is that should populist politicians win credit for a more buoyant economy, their policies will gain credence with potentially devastating effects. The past 10 years has witnessed a number of false dawns in which optimism at the start of a year has been undone, either by the euro crisis, emerging market wobbles, the collapse of the oil price, or fears of a meltdown in China. Despite this, America's economy has kept growing, albeit into a headwind. The improvements have been such that the Fed last week raised rates for the first time in 2017, but for the second time in 3 months, thanks partly to the buoyancy of the American economy, but also because of growth elsewhere. Fears about Chinese overcapacity and of a yuan devaluation have receded. In February, factory gate inflation was close to a 9-year high. In Japan, in the fourth quarter, capital expenditure grew at its fastest rate in 3 years, and even the euro area has been gathering speed since 2015. The European Commission's Economic Sentiment Index is at its highest since 2011. Eurozone unemployment is at its lowest since 2009. It is also forecast that Brazil and Russia are likely to add to global GDP this year, not subtract from it. And the Institute of International Finance quotes that in January, the developing world hit its fastest monthly rate of growth since 2011. That said, there are still concerns. Falls in the oil price may more adversely affect supply countries than benefit consumers. China's debt buildup is worrying. World productivity in developed countries remains weak. And American surging business confidence has yet to translate into increased investment. As inflation expectations rise, central banks will have to weigh the pressure to tighten policy against the risk that, if they go too fast, bond markets and borrowers will suffer. Europe is especially vulnerable because the European Central Bank is reaching the legal limits of the bond buying program it has used to keep money cheap in weak economies. It is strongly argued in the economic community that the global upswing vindicates economists' argument that recoveries from financial crashes take a long time. For on average, incomes revert to pre-crisis levels only after 8 years. Most economists also argue that the best way to recover after a debt crisis is to clean up balance sheets quickly, keep monetary policy loose, and apply fiscal stimulus wherever prudently possible. Today's recovery appears to validate that prescription. The Fed kept interest rates low until full employment was in sight. The ECB's bond buying program has kept borrowing costs in crisis-prone countries tolerable. Though Europe's misplaced emphasis on austerity, recently relaxed, made the job more difficult. In Japan, rises in VAT have scuppered previous recoveries. This time, the government wisely deferred an increase until at least 2019. The worry now is that a move towards a more populist economic agenda based around protectionism could scupper these advancements. Mr. Trump's proposed tax cuts would pump up the economy that now least needs support, while at the same time potentially igniting a trade war with China. A strong dollar and increased spending at home would widen the trade gap and could quite possibly create that boom-bust scenario that we have all heard the pumpers claim is just around the corner. So what are your thoughts? Is the Fed confident that growth is en route and that a Trump presidency may actually adversely affect it by attempting to boost the economy too quickly? Has the last 9 or 10 years, though proving difficult, established a path to prosperity without the calamitous economic collapse so widely predicted? And finally, should our political and economic masters adopt a steady-as-she-goes policy or attempt to boost the economy further with easy money and financial stimulus? We should like to hear your views. We hope you have found this video interesting and informative, and if so, please give it a thumb up and share it on Twitter. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe as a free member for regular email updates and offers. Our Facebook page, which is updated daily, can be found at facebook.com/illuminatisilver. Disclaimer. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.